right, let's see. How do I want to start this off? Probably like this. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Sideways in Time. It's a podcast, kind of. That's our @ on Twitter. Hope everybody's having a great week. It's actually friggin' gorgeous outside. Finally out here in Kansas City. I had my windows open last night and the night before. Oh, man.
Me too.
Hoping it stays like this for a while.
Yeah. It's just shy of hoodie weather, and there's nothing better than that.
Oh, I mean, I'm in my gear, and I got my beanie. I'm ready to go.
You're big pimpin'.
I'm
over in my my Mark Andrews shirt.
Nice.
I'm one of 3 people in the world that own this. The other 2 are Mark Andrews and his mom. I'm surprised I didn't get a handwritten letter from Mark Andrews.
That's awesome.
Thank you for buying.
By the way, everybody, the always wonderful, funny, one and only bearded Patriot Pat. I had an intro for you all planned out, and it just completely went to the wayside. What's up, Patrick?
Not much. How you doing, my friend? As always, with me is the beautiful and covered and just a warm, down to earth, kind hearted Lucha Chris.
Hey, hey! I haven't seen you since what was it? Friday or Saturday?
It's Friday.
Yeah, it was a Friday.
Yeah.
We before we get into what we did on Friday, how about you tell us the weekly joke?
Okay. Well, did you hear they're doing a remake of the Highlander movie?
I didn't.
Yeah. This time they're going to use an all Mexican cast. There can be only Juan.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Horrible pun.
Hey, man. It's content.
That's a Patriot Pat original right there. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. That's the kind of shit I told on stage in front of tens of people.
Tens of people. That was funnier than the initial joke. So anyways, on Friday, this past Friday, we were able to finally, if anybody's been paying attention, Journey Pro Wrestling here in KC, they did this, all our shows were secret shows, and they did this special thing where they didn't let us know where the location was, but dropped little hints, let us figure it out for ourselves. Pat and I are obviously not the quickest because we put out several videos of us trying to find it in multiple different places and with no luck. And finally, we showed up as the show was going on.
We didn't, let's be honest, Luch, we didn't even find it. We fucking stumbled across it.
Yeah, we just walked up on it. Somehow, I don't know how your wife met us there. I don't know if she was driving. I don't know what happened with that, but her being there and us just happening to find it, I don't get that. But
she pinged my phone. She knows I get lost easy, so she pings my phone. It's kind of like like the little kids with the leash.
Yeah,
I kind of have that with the cell phone because, I wander.
Yeah, hey, and we just happened to wander right into the right place. Journey Pro Wrestling, like I said.
What are the odds?
Yeah, right. All our shows are secret shows. It was out in Edwardsville, Kansas at Edwardsville City Park. I'm not going to lie. I finally got to make it to a wrestling show on a baseball field. That was awesome. The lighting was great.
In one. Oh, yeah. The lighting was phenomenal. The outside the ring pads were.
It was dirt. And as I had explained earlier in that night, it wasn't actually dirt. It was like broken down rocks. So it was
baseball. If you've been on a baseball infield, like a little league one, that's exactly what it was. Just that gravelly, rocky, sandy. Yeah, fun to slide in occasionally. Not fun to get body slammed and tackled and dive on repeatedly.
Right. So to go over a few highlights, because it was a really awesome show. I think everybody that showed up, including ourselves, had an amazing time. DJ and Walter seemed to have a wonderful time. So yeah, it was all around a good show. A couple of the major highlights. I guess it was the semi-main event. Jeremy Wyatt versus Kenny Alfonso for the Gateway Heritage Championship. Go ahead and tell us how you feel about Kenny Alfonso.
Got the body of a Greek god.
Dude, he said it at least 12 times at the show. And on every show we have so far that we've mentioned that guy's name.
Have you seen him? He is chiseled from marble. Michelangelo would look at his form and weep.
Oh, man. So, yeah, needless to say, it was a great match. Anytime you put either one of the two of them in a match with anybody, it's probably going to be pretty good, even though Jeremy Wyatt's a piece of shit.
Yeah, big piece of shit.
but badass match.
God, can he work? God damn, can he work?
Know, and that pile driver at the end, I mean, Kenny Alfonso looked like he had actually had the match going for him early on, and then he just kind of lost step towards the end there, and then yeah, Jeremy Wyatt got him. A surprise at the end of that, KLD, Kevin Lee Davison from St. Louis, came walking out. None of us were really sure what was going on with that. Sure enough, he comes in
barreling down that aisle like a god, like the Boulder in fucking Raiders.
As soon as I saw Jovi, I immediately got sour, because that means that Jovi has collected yet another indie talent into his regime, and KLD immediately ran in and beat the holy shit out of Kenny Alfonso, setting up what I would assume to be a feud, which I'm excited about. Maybe that means we'll see KLD more often in Kansas City. Yeah, awesome match. Another probably match of the night for me personally, even though it didn't really take place very much in the ring at all. The Howlettes, which are, let me just say, and I said it on Twitter at Lucha Chris TV, at Gone Patrick, at Podcast Kinda. I said on my Twitter account that the Howlettes are rapidly becoming one of my favorite tag teams, period, of all time. Like, their intensity is infectious. I think that's exactly what I even said on my Twitter account. On the twit. And
on the platter.
Yeah, versus Christian Rose and Gary J. If you want to know what led up to this, check out episode 2. We discussed it a little bit more in detail there, but they were, speaking of that dirt rock floor, this was a Falls Count Anywhere match. They beat the holy hell out of each other. Dust everywhere. What was your take from this match?
Well, first off, a moment of silence for that one woman's chair.
That poor.
I recommended
chair,
a 10-bell salute at the next show.
Yeah.
It was the most fun because you had stuff going on everywhere. The four of them, just beating the shit out of each other was incredible. It was the chemistry that they have, the four of them have is great. And like you're saying, the Howlettes, Hoodie is like one of the scariest sumbitches around.
Absolutely.
And that's not taking anything away from Anaya. The way I would put it is like, Anaya would rip your face off. Hoodie would grill it up and eat it and make you watch with 100%. Your eyelidless face.
That's a very good interpretation of that.
Yeah,
and they put Christian Rose through a table at ringside. There was a bunch of dive spots. Speaking of dive spots, where right behind us where the hard cam was also a box truck. Gary J just happened to disappear out of nowhere. They're all kind of brawling right there. Gary J disappears, climbs up, and does a huge crossbody dive into all three of the guys below. That was a super cool spot. At one point, the Howlettes were climbing the fence. I don't know.
The batter's cage.
I don't know exactly what they were trying to accomplish with that, but it looked really cool. Because if you were in the right position, the pictures made it look like it was a Hell in a Cell match the whole night.
with the first 10 rows of the crowd in the cell.
So that was a badass match. The Howlettes, of course, they beat Gary J and Christian Rose. Also, Christian Rose tore up his Ticket to Ride that Walter had given a free one basically to Gary and Christian Rose due to the way things happened at the Lemonade Park show. Christian Rose said he wanted to earn it. He didn't want to be given it. They lose the match. I'm not sure what happens from there. Obviously, I think we're supposed to find out either this coming Monday or the following Monday when the next Journey Pro show is. There was also there was a lot of other great matches, but I do want to also mention that on Dark's been picking up all kinds of local talent, indie guys. This guy's not from Kansas City. He's not from St. Louis, but he's one of the guys that's a regular in our towns. JDX, who wrestled at Journey Pro that night, will be facing Wardlow on Dark. I think that happened. It was yesterday. And then also, so that was pretty cool. I lost myself right there for a second, but I'm back.
Stallion Rogers, who is, he's from Texas, but he was a mainstay in.
I mean, he lived in St. Louis for a while.
Yeah, he's teaming with I forget his name now. He was August Gregg in NXT, but he's teaming with those two are teaming up on Dark as well. So yeah, St. Louis, Kansas City, that Iowa, this whole area. You get a lot of fucking talent from here that you don't realize. It's, I don't know. It's weird because this is flyover country. You think like everybody's from New York or LA or maybe Florida, Texas.
There's a lot of Minnesota and stuff like that. But,
there's a lot of heritage here. You like going back all the way Harley Race and the Ortons and stuff. So
anyway. The Gateway Heritage Championship. Yeah, I'm just saying. Yeah. So there's also a picture as I'm scrolling through Journey Pro's Twitter. At Journey Pro Casey. There's a picture of Warhorse who made his return to Journey Pro on that show, and behind him is a handsome Patriot Pat and a handsome Lucha Chris in the background. So there's that.
Did you know this about Warhorse? He rules ass.
Oh no, he rules. He rules so much ass.
I love.
He's also, I just saw when I woke up this morning, one of the first things I saw is that he's debuting in MLW here shortly. So that's pretty fucking cool.
I saw you tweet that. That's awesome. That's big stuff for him.
Yeah.
Congrats to him.
All around, there was definitely more to that card. The three-way match between the girls was really cool. That whole first opening segment of them trying to figure out the dance moves and stuff was actually that had me popped.
Yeah, it was fun. It was cute.
I was cracking up, and then the match itself turned out to be awesome, of course. So anyway, and then they had a show the following night. Neither one of us were able to make it to the show, unfortunately, but it was a daytime show, another free show for the Edwardsville, Illinois
Edwardsville,
fair.
Kansas.
That's what I meant. Whatever. I'm from the other side, sort of, kind of close.
No, like I said at the show, it screwed me up because I used to live in Edwardsburg, Michigan. So,
So yeah. Needless to say, Journey Pro was phenomenal yet again, and we got to see a bunch of our regular friends and family, and we met some new friends and family, and your wife's first Journey Pro show, what'd she think about it?
She absolutely loved it. She's talking about on the way home. She was like, I wasn't expecting it to be that good. She said it was like the talent, it wasn't like Dynamite or Raw or anything like that, the show. She goes, but the matches were solid and the talent was really good. She had a lot of fun. Oh, and I want to apologize to, I'm going to give a shout out apology to Bryan, who showed up and he goes, hey, Pat. And I looked.
Oh, lost your audio, bud.
I was getting a phone call.
Oh, okay.
So Bryan comes up and he goes, hey, Pat. And I'm looking at him like, I know this guy, but I can't fucking remember. And then, and he was like, oh, yeah, blah, blah, blah. We met at and I was like, oh, crap, yeah. And then I was looking on Twitter, and I'm like, he's been following me since Jump and liking everything, and I didn't put two and two together. I apologize, Bryan. So
shout out to him and his wife, who were right next
to us
at the show.
Shout out to him and his wife. They had a great time. Yeah, my wife absolutely loved it. So yeah, she's looking forward to the next one.
Awesome. Yeah. So all around, it was a great night. Another highlight too, real quick. Speaking of Warhorse, was Ku, who I had never seen
Holy crap
wrestle before, and he ended up ultimately going over in that match. They were fucking awesome together, and he was. I can't wait to see him again. Like, yeah, I'm surprised I had not heard of him yet.
Yeah, me neither. And yeah, I hope he does a lot more stuff with Journey Pro, and I can see bigger things for him. Dude is fucking talented.
Yeah, he was really good, man. I was impressed, and he had his comedy was on point, but his style, his wrestling style, and his intensity was on point. He kind of had a full package, honestly. He was he was really
look
good.
That closely at him, so I don't know if his package was full, but he was.
Oh, I did.
But he had.
Yeah. So moving on. We're gonna go ahead and move forward here to just a quick highlight of AEW this week. It's been a crazy week, and I know I think I've said that the last couple weeks, which is why we didn't have a show for a week a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, and just a reminder, we're filming this on Wednesday, but it won't release until Thursday. So
right,
we'll be discussing the Dynamite from last week, not the Arthur Ashe Dynamite.
Right, and the Rampage as well. So, just real quickly, and the reason I said something about it being crazy is I didn't get to see either show all the way through. I did get to see the majority of it. And it kind of bums me out sometimes when I really can't find the time to really dedicate to pay attention to AEW, just because I feel like every week, if you miss something, you're missing something. It's not like if you miss a couple Raws and it's like, well, the stories don't mean shit anyway. If you miss a Dynamite or a Rampage, you're going to miss part of the story.
You miss a few Raws, you come back and you're like, oh, Alexa has a new doll.
Right.
Let's see what's on another channel. This is stupid.
And I know we said before the show when we talked that there was nothing really to talk about on Raw or SmackDown. I will at the end of this little AEW segment. I do have a couple things I wanted to mention, and that just reminded me of it.
Okay.
And so I'll get to that when we get there. But yeah, so Dynamite's card was Adam Cole versus Frankie Kazarian. I don't know if anybody actually watches AEW or have watched Impact or Ring of Honor. Frankie Kazarian is extremely underrated.
Yeah.
That dude can fucking go, and putting him with Adam Cole for Adam Cole's first match, it's obvious Frankie Kazarian is one of those guys that they're like, look, man, we need somebody to look real good. Let's have Frankie go in there because he's going to look good coming out of it regardless, and he's going to make his opponent look amazing. And that's all that match was. It was fantastic.
Oh God, I like Frankie more now than I did back in the when I was watching him on Impact and stuff.
I appreciate it a lot more now than I used to.
Yeah, I like his look now. He looks like just a grizzled, angry motherfucker who's I dig it.
I agree. Then we also had Moxley versus Eddie Kingston versus 2.0. Again, 2.0 being used exactly how they should be, and nobody can go wrong with John and Mox. And Mox. I word so good every week.
Moxley you Kingston. Think good thing we're not recording this and putting this out there in the masses.
Yeah.
Oh, dude. Yeah, we could say we are international now. Because I looked on our Anchor analytics, and we have one listener in Germany. So to you, I say, ich habe keine Kartoffelsalat.
See. We also had Jade Cargill versus legit Layla Hirsch.
That was tight.
This is one of the matches I didn't see, but those two were really fucking good. So there's not really much I can only assume it was a good match. Let's put it that way.
Cargill is a year, 18 months away from, maybe 2 years from just breaking out. And I mean, she's just got to build up matches and get in-ring work, but goddamn is she good. And then legit Layla Hirsch, that fucking moniker, that is accurate. She is legit.
She's a little beast, man.
Yeah. She, that was a lot of fun. I was in I was expecting a pretty decent match, but I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would.
I don't have to say I'm not going to say a whole lot about it, but Dan Lampert returned again and made an appearance. Let me just say, for all the Dan Lampert haters, go fuck yourself. That dude is one of the best personalities in pro wrestling in many, many years. Like it's mind-boggling to me how good he is at talking and being like a wrestling personality in front of that crowd. Dude is
I fucking
great.
hate him.
Exactly.
And he is so good. And and
he's got a bright future if he wants it. Let's just put it that way.
I
don't know.
Well, I mean, he's young. He can. Yeah,
he's not super young, but
I will say I'm excited that he and New Balance have teamed up. There's the official Dan Lambert shoe.
Wow. We also had Daniel Bryan interview. If I'm not mistaken, this was the interview that was cut off by Kenny. I'm getting Rampage and Dynamite kind of mixed up, but it's gonna turn into it's not for the championship. It's the battle for the white tees. And I'm here for it. And then, of course, the what I think personally was the match of the night was Darby Allin versus Shawn Spears.
That was good.
It's a killer fucking match, man. That there's not really much else can be said. That match was phenomenal. Darby doing the regular Darby thing, but Shawn Spears, who hasn't actually been utilized as much since being a part of AEW. I was extremely entertained by that one. And then we also go into Rampage, and really, for me personally, I was excited to see Butcher back with the Blade, and because of that, we had the Butcher and the Blade with Bunny versus the Lucha Brothers, and that match, I mean, it was fucking awesome. I mean,
it was ugly, but it was basically there to set up Luchas versus Santana and Ortiz.
Right.
Who are they? Pride and Powerful? Is that the name of their team?
Pride and Powerful. They came out to help save the Lucha Brothers at the end. And pretty much the entire HFO was out there, so they kind of helped even the odds. And obviously the Lucha Brothers retain. Let's see. We also had, this is the one I really didn't get to see too much. So I guess we got another Miro versus Fuego del Sol. I wish I would have seen this one. I'm gonna have to watch it as soon as I get a second.
That was fun. Fuego lost his car, and the best thing was he tweeted the next day, "Can anybody give me a ride?"
I did see that. That's fucking hilarious. And then speaking of AEW, Kansas City just found out that we're gonna get a little treat, a little piece of the best piece of candy.
This ain't no Mary Jane or Squirrel Nut Zipper. We're talking about Twix. This is a left-handed Twix,
and also melted into with a Snickers and a Reese's Fast Break,
and wrapped in a Kit
Kat. Wednesday, November 3rd in Independence, Missouri, at the Cable DeMar Arena.
Independence.
We're getting Dynamite, everybody, and I'm pretty stoked because the St. Louis date that wasn't far after that was canceled, or at least postponed and changed to another city. So Kansas City's way closer than St. Louis for me. So I'm definitely, tickets go on sale this Friday. Shit.
10 a.m. I go to work at 11, so I will be on the website buying tickets.
Even though I don't want to tell any of you all this information so that we can get our tickets before you. Tickets also start from $29. So, and I have to admit, or not admit, but I've never been to this arena, but I will say that anytime I had been to a WWE show and got the $20 nosebleed seats, it's still a fucking fantastic show. So get the cheap seats too. It's really not going to matter. You're going to have a great time. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. And a couple of things, like I said, I wanted to mention about the other shows. You mentioned the Charlotte Flair thing. I specifically don't want to go into great detail of the Dark Side of the Ring episode about the plane ride from hell. I think
everybody went over that.
Our show doesn't need to go there. Everybody knows about it. That being said, I have to assume, my brother and I were talking about this yesterday, the promo between Alexa Bliss and Charlotte last week or this week was interesting to me, because they did a lot of Alexa talking about how, who are you? They were going back and forth about who's more original, which is funny because Charlotte was like, well, look at you, clearly showing that she was a blatant ripoff of the Fiend or the continuation of the Fiend character because of Wyndham being taken off television and out of the company, but also Bliss poking at Charlotte about the whole Flair legacy. I have to assume, maybe I'm wrong, and I'm, knowing WWE and my predictions of WWE television, I have a feeling maybe they're trying to repackage Charlotte.
Nah, they might. They dropped the Wwe, I guess, from the opening
and Flair's picture.
So
I think it'd be good for her too. We all at this point, the Flair name has established. She worked that to her advantage and did a very fantastic job doing it, in my opinion. So that being said, with everything that happened, if you haven't seen the Dark Side of the Ring episode about the plane ride from hell, by all means, go check it out. It's a lot more gnarly than we all thought, even though most of us knew a good majority by now what happened. So if you want more details on that, go check that out as to why I'm saying they're probably going to start to make Charlotte her own thing. My brother swears Charlotte's going to leave the company in a couple years. I don't know where she would go. I mean, yeah, she could go to AEW and she would probably be great. But I feel like she's a lifer. But considering both her dad and her boyfriend, fiance, whatever he is in Andrade being there and her dad being gone, maybe she would be tempted to leave. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And then just real quick, I did find out, and I don't know if we mentioned it or not last week, but we find out later on that Meltzer, per usual, is pretty full of shit. So Vince and Pritchard are not completely overtaking the new NXT 2.0. They do have their hand on creative as far as it goes through them now, whereas before they didn't focus on NXT. They just kind of let NXT do NXT. So now they're the final boss of NXT creative, but ultimately they don't make any of the changes. Being that Triple H is gone, which apparently there's reports that have come out that Triple H is doing pretty good since his cardiac event, they keep calling it.
He thanked everybody, and I'm glad he's doing well. I love
absolutely. Being that he was gone, the person that was actually in charge of the first 2.0 show was Shawn Michaels, who will be the one kind of spearheading the show until Triple H comes back, which is kind of an interesting thing to me. And the one takeaway, other than the fact that it seemed like there was a million introductions and no one getting over of new talent, they are Braun Breaker and is going straight to Ciampa. And so it looks like they're going to have some kind of thing. Sure. Okay.
Yeah. If you look at the dynamic, out with the old and with the new,
right?
Ciampa's the old way, and he exemplifies the old way of NXT.
I agree.
And even you look at his shirts, all his shirts are black and gold.
Right.
All his merch
so
is
are
black
Adam
and gold.
Cole's.
Yeah, they still are.
Yeah. So anyways, that was the little bit I wanted to take away from WWE and NXT. So from there, we can we're gonna bring on our old friend JCB for yet another. Speaking of WWE, he's got himself a WWE rant that involves the Hurt Business, and so we're gonna hear from him, and we'll be right back.
He's heating up. What's up, everybody? It's your boy JCB, Jason Cornelius Bell. I'm back for this week's weekly rant. My rant this week is going to be on the Hurt Business, or in this case, the lack thereof. We had a really good Monday Night Raw this week. The opening match being the Bloodline versus the New Day. Wouldn't it have been cool to have the Hurt Business there as well? Make it a triple threat, a Bill Vegas special. Have Shelton and Cedric and Bobby Lashley together. the way they should have been. They should have never been broken up. And I've said this so many times, and it's going to be one of the things I hammer home for the rest of 2021. Hurt Business was a really good tag team. You put them together, they got the crowd invested, and then you broke them up for Drew McIntyre's feud with Bobby Lashley. There was no reason to break them up. Okay? Now that MVP's gone, and you don't have Cedric and Shelton Benjamin, Bobby Lashley's basically out there doing this thing by himself. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, he can handle his business physically in the ring, but it'd have been nice to have a couple of sidekicks to take care of the Bloodline and the New Day next to him. Bobby Lashley isn't the best talker. That's why you have MVP around. You take Bobby Lashley's deficiencies and you work around them. These are a couple of things that you could have done to help out not only Bobby Lashley, but the tag team division. A few weeks ago, we had the tag team turmoil match where it was a gauntlet match or whatever the case may be, and New Day had 5 matches. You don't think the Hurt Business could have came in and had a couple of those matches too? That's just fucking ridiculous. The bottom line is the Hurt Business is broken up way too early. You've had opportunities, at least a couple that I can think of off the top of my head, to put them in situations where they could have made a good storyline better and a better storyline great. Monday night was one of those times, and for my benefit, they dropped the ball. This is your boy, JCB. I'm out.
And we're back. Yet again, thank you, JCB, for chiming in every week and giving us a nice little rant.
Yes,
I don't disagree.
Thank you, JCB.
Yeah, Hurt Business is severely not even underused anymore since they're not together.
Yeah,
but,
that was when they broke them up. I couldn't believe that because you had something really going, and now
especially if they're trying to eliminate the brand split. Like, there's a lot of people that are trying to eliminate that, and I don't agree or disagree. I'm kind of indifferent. I think it would make sense for a little while, but being that you have, the tribe, or what are they calling
the
bloodline, and then you've got the New Day, and then you've got Hurt Business, and then you've got all these badass groups. Like, WWE never likes to pull the trigger on stables, and it always worked really well. So anyways, again, thank you, JCB, at BFRJCB on Twitter, at BFR Pod is banned from Ringside Podcast, where he comes from, at BFR Bill, and at BFR Zach with an H. As always, check them out every Friday. Their podcast is superb.
Their podcast, unlike ours, their podcast is entertaining.
It's super entertaining.
It's really good. I think our podcast is just a commercial for their podcast.
Well, it is, and gladly so. But it was funny because last week's episode that they did, Bill got a little tipsy by the end of the episode, and it showed.
Yeah, I noticed that.
And it was really funny because by the end they did the birthdays at the end and the odds and ends, and they just pretty much cut the show off. Bill was
it was going off the rails.
Yeah, he was banged up.
I wonder what was on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, nothing. They don't ever put anything on the cutting room floor.
But before we move on from last week's shows, I did watch Impact. I've been watching a lot of Impact.
It's a good show.
Yeah, don't sleep on Impact. That is solid. It is really good. The 10-man tag was awesome. And I know Christian is the champ, but goddamn, is there anybody better than Josh Alexander?
Yeah, so good, man.
It's just amazing.
He's actually going to be on the another plug to some friends in St. Louis, the Grandel Wrestling podcast. He'll be on that. It's either already up or it's coming up. I'm not exactly sure, but if you haven't already, go check out Wrestling Grandel or Grandel Wrestling Podcast. It was a promotion that was going to get started up before the pandemic hit, and it turned into a podcast, and it's going to evolve from there. But it's involving a lot of good people from down there. So if you can, go check it out.
But cool.
Yeah.
And then what was it? They had they had the pay-per-view on Friday. I forget what it was. And I apologize. But I don't get Impact Plus, and I can only afford one pay-per-view every now and then, and it's going to be AEW.
Is it Bound for Glory?
Was it Bound for Glory? I don't know, but yeah, Christian beat Austin to retain, setting up Josh Alexander. He's using his X Division clause to challenge Christian Cage for the title, and I think that's the way to go. I think you pass the title to Christian, or Christian passes it to Josh Alexander, who is fucking Impact.
You take it off of Christian already?
I would take it off Christian. Yeah, he got the. I think he's getting more eyes on Impact. You give it to Alexander and have him be champ, and then Christian goes back to AEW.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
That's my take. But
yeah. I'm not against it.
And yeah, so yeah, don't sleep on Impact. I love the show.
What nights are they on?
They're Thursday night. I don't know what time because I just record it.
I got you.
I just DVR it and watch it on my downtime.
Sweet. Yeah. So like he said, don't sleep on Impact.
Well, Patriot Pup is whining. I gotta let her out.
All right.
Come on, baby. Oh, you don't have to go radio silent. I mean,
that's all right. I'll just cut between it. It's fine. The beauty of editing.
All right. And I'm back.
All right. So without further ado, we're going to jump into our next segment here, our Mount Rushmore. And this week we are doing our Mount Rushmore of the best talkers in the business. Now, clearly this could be a much bigger Mount Rushmore than 4 guys or girls. But sadly, Mount Rushmore has 4 heads on it. So we're going to have to go with 4 of our favorite talkers in the business. And Patrick, why don't you go ahead and go first?
All right. Mine, I'm going to start with somebody new, MJF. And
it's a good one.
Because he exudes everything from all the history of great heel talkers.
Old school heel.
And he pulls no punches. He's an old school mentality, but in 2021, freedom, I guess. So you're allowed to say a lot more now than you could in the 80s,
especially
90s.
AEW.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I would just say culturally, you could get away with a lot more on TV than you could 20
Oh, yeah,
years
of course.
So I love MJF. Love to hate MJF. Another one who, just because he was so erratic, he didn't know what was going to happen, Roddy Piper.
He's great too, man.
Just when you think you know the answers, I change the questions. All the quips and stuff he had.
He could also be known as one of the greatest yellers in the wrestling business.
And I mean, it wasn't always coherent. You couldn't always follow him. He got you from point A to point B, but went some convoluted polar route to get there. I always entertained by him. My next one, Stone Cold. I loved his promos. I loved his rants because it was the angry working man, and that's what I was at the time. I was in the Army at the time. And you want to yell at your boss and stuff, and he's the one going, flipping his boss up, calling him a piece of trash, and stomping a mud hole in his butt.
That's one of my guys.
Oh, okay. So
I love
him.
Not one of my Mount Rushmore, just one of my guys.
Oh, okay.
I love that.
Okay.
Stone Cold's one of my favorites.
And then to top it off, not a wrestler, but in my opinion, hands down the best talker in the game, Paul Heyman. Yeah, that's not a prediction.
That's a spoiler.
That's
his thing.
I know. Dude can. The thing I liked about him is he could make, like, when he was with Brock and Brock was facing Finn and Brock was facing AJ, he could put Brock over in the same promo while putting Finn over, while putting AJ over. So you always had that little nugget just from Paul's promos. You got that little nugget that maybe this little guy could be the big bad Brock Lesnar. So
Right.
he's just got a way of weaving it. His work with Roman is just phenomenal because
Great.
he's a little slimier.
Especially with the dynamic between him and Brock now, that whole thing is so intriguing.
Yeah, and I gotta go back and watch some of the Raws and stuff, and SmackDowns just to see his stuff with that. But yeah, so yeah, that's my Rushmore: MJF, Stone Cold, Roddy Piper, and Paulie Dangerously.
All fantastic. What's funny is this will kind of give away my shoot name a little bit, but my first Twitter handle was actually Mur-E Dangerously. My last name's, we're gonna say Merzano. So anyway, that awesome. All four of those are fucking fantastic. Like I'm actually jealous I didn't pick Paul Heyman, even though he was on my list and I crossed him out for another one. Mine, I'm gonna have to start with, and I went back and forth about this, but I'm just gonna stick with it because you know what, Chris Jericho is one of the greatest talkers in the business. He's always able to talk his way in or out of any scenario. The whole list of Jericho, going back even further than that, dude can cut a promo just as good, if not. I mean, look, in AEW alone, a little bit of the bubbly, like, was something that was just spontaneous that they let him. He just went off and said, and it turned into one of the most lucrative things in the beginning of the
over
company.
A year later, you're still seeing signs of it.
Signs of it. They actually made custom champagne that's called a little bit of the bubbly. His action figure came out with a little bottle of the bubbly.
Oh my gosh.
Like, dude, like, I mean, so that alone should say something. I'm also going to put CM Punk in that category for obvious reasons. I mean, dude's famous for the pipe bomb. The dude's famous for basically every pipe bomb, because in WWE,
he's famous for honesty.
And even if he was full of shit, even if we're getting worked, he was still so good at getting his point across. And he's very he was very intense talker.
He's famous for validity because you buy into it, or believability. So okay.
So again, I feel like the pipe bomb was somewhat of a shoot, but it was also somewhat of a work. It had to be, because I think once he got to that tail end part where he starts talking about the anti-bullying campaign and they cut his mic, I feel like that was worked. Doesn't matter. It got everybody riled up, and he started a movement based on his talking skills. Everybody remembers him being able to wrestle. There's no question he can go in the ring. But I think where he really made his mark was with the microphone. Like, he was able to convince everyone that every word he said was true, whether it was or it wasn't. Another one, which it was either between Stone Cold or this one. And there's a reason why I picked this one, and I'll explain. I'm going to say The Rock. Because even towards the end of his actual full-time run, he could go either backstage or in front of the crowd and say something that made absolutely no sense. He would just go off on his little jabroni rants and, putting his foot in salad dressing and sticking up your candy ass or whatever the fuck. And he was able to just say anything, and it just popped everybody. Like, no matter what he said, whether he was heel, face, a tweener, whatever, he just popped everyone every single time he opened his mouth. The dude, he was fantastic at it.
And he also, because jabroni was a term, a backstage term,
right,
that not many people knew.
Yeah, so
he brought that out. I mean, he kind of pulled back the veil.
Oh, and that he's another one. It's like, yes, he was a good wrestler. He was maybe even a great wrestler, but he wasn't famous because of his wrestling ability. He was kind of like Hogan, where he had a handful of really good moves and could work outside of that, but he got famous and got over because of his ability to talk to the crowd and talk to the wrestlers. So he's one of my favorites. And then, of course, my number one, who's on probably my number one list for almost any category you can go through. Bones is excited. I don't know if you can hear him. But Mick Foley. Like,
you're stupid.
why?
I'm just fucking with you.
What the fuck? Anyway,
no, you're absolutely right.
Mick Foley is one of the greatest of all time in general, if you ask me. And you didn't, but I'm telling you anyway. His ECW promos specifically were some of the best promos ever on wrestling television of all time. The intensity he put into those promos and the realism, and he was like the actors that play Joker. He went all in the Cactus Jack, Mick Foley hybrid in ECW. His work as Mankind, everybody wants to give Undertaker credit for making a dead, undead, grave digging guy over for 30 plus years. Mick Foley was able to make a dude who was, I guess, just a psychopath in Mankind, the original incarnation of Mankind, that mask, the whole 9 yards. He was able to turn that into one of the most intriguing gimmicks of all time, especially at that time.
He was able to turn that into a marketing juggernaut.
His guttural, like throaty, whiny, screechy promos, and he's just pulling his hair out, and he was just so intense, man. And he believed every word he said. He was just fantastic. As any of his as Mick Foley, as Mankind, as Cactus Jack, as Dude Love, like he was able to shift gears in all the right ways and make each one of them talk just right for that gimmick. Like he was awesome. He was one of the best ever, if not the best in my opinion, as far as influence wise. Like he had to have influenced an entire generation of talkers. So yeah, but that being said, your last one was Paul Heyman. My last one was Mick Foley, both coming from ECW at one time or another. I'm going to throw in a little tidbit here that I think I might add to every show. If you were ever a listener to my old show, Getting Over podcast, which lasted maybe 4 episodes, then you know that every episode I did a today in history, in wrestling history. And today in wrestling history, what are we? It's September 22nd, 2001. And September 22nd, 1996, WWE held their In Your House Mind Games pay-per-view in Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania. And this was the show where Sammy Vega beat Bradshaw in the Caribbean strap match. This was also during the match when ECW's Tommy Dreamer, Sandman, Paul Heyman came out to ringside. Sandman spatting beer in a couple of the wrestlers' faces. They start kind of having like a little brawl. This is the first time ECW had made an appearance in WWE as ECW guys. They did a fairly good job making it seem like a shoot. Taz and Perry Saturn, also with ECW at the time, were seated in the crowd as well. Also on that show, Owen Hart versus Davey Boy Smith defeated the tag champions, the Smoking Guns. Oh, speaking of Owen Hart, just a real quick, AEW is just the salt of the earth. I think it's also mainly because his wife wants absolutely nothing with WWE making any kind of money or any mention of Owen. But AEW is doing an Owen Hart tournament, and I think the trophy itself is called the Owen.
It's the Owen or the Owen Cup.
I think that's one of the coolest things AEW's been able to accomplish since their inception.
An action figure, and they are doing Owen in the AEW video game.
So I don't do a whole lot of figure collecting outside of masked figures. Like I collect a lot of action figures and a lot of wrestling figures. Normally I stick with the masks. I have it escapes me. The blue, what was his last gimmick? I have the Blue Blazer Bone Cruncher, still mint on card. So I have an Owen Hart figure, but I will be getting this one when AEW puts it out, because they have some fantastic toys. So anyway, going back to the day in history, obviously I chose this one because of the ECW reference. Obviously, because if you're aware of what we're doing this week, our what if segment this week is what if Paul Heyman and ECW were able to find a TV deal to keep ECW alive. This one's going to be really fun for me because I'm a big ECW fan. I was then. I still am, even though a lot of it's pretty cringe these days. But I think it'd be a disservice to say that ECW wasn't one of the biggest influences in modern professional wrestling ever, regardless of its status or its hardcore nature. So as usual, every week we're going to jump in our time machine. We're going to go sideways in time, and we're going to discuss what if Paul Heyman and ECW were able to get TV. Obviously, just as a little lead in 1999, ECW was moving towards a somewhat more sponsor-friendly product. The fans wanted it to remain extreme and wanted it to keep its hardcore nature. But it was really hard to hold on to sponsors at the time because that hardcore nature just was not a very universally loved product. It was hard to keep sponsors because of the lewd, violent and bloody nature of ECW at the time, which turned a lot of people off. To be fair, WWE was actually helping fund ECW there for a time. I think that was a mostly unknown fact up until the last 10 years or so, and because of it, Paul Heyman did everything he says he could to keep ECW on TV. There was a deal with TNN that they were on TNN for a while. They considering TNN's ratings weren't very good for any of their other products. ECW's hardcore TV was, but that's not saying very much as far as ratings were concerned.
Yeah, that was like being the highest turd in the toilet bowl. I mean,
right, and that's
TNN morphed into Spike, but back then because it was the Nashville network, and it was very nuanced.
It was, and that's the thing too. So TNN, the reason they put ECW Hardcore TV on TNN at the time, because they were the guinea pigs for WWE. Because as we know, and we talked about it last week, WWE Raw ended up on TNN for a short period of time. So let's start there. Obviously, ECW, that last couple of weeks, we had a promo from Paul Heyman who was screaming directly into the microphone and into the camera saying, "Go ahead. I dare you to throw us off TV. I dare you to shut us off." He was just trying to go out with a blaze because they knew they weren't going to be able to have enough time to find themselves a TV deal in order to keep the show on the air. Little did most people know that Paul Heyman did have a plan to move ECW into a new format. He was going to rebrand ECW a bit to try to keep himself from being, taken off the air. He had a lot of mouths to feed, including his own and his family's. So what we're going to do is we're going to go from there. We're going to say that ECW was on TNN, but I think what would have been best for ECW is if Spike TV came along and quite possibly MTV, who ECW definitely marketed most of their content to, was the MTV audience, the young demographic, the more edgy demographic. And let's say they landed on Spike, because Spike would have been able to put them on a later time slot where they could have still been a little edgier. Spike also would have just been the right place for them. We saw that with TNA Impact for a little while. 100% Paul Heyman would have slowed down on the quote unquote extreme or hardcore, because extreme wasn't necessarily meant to mean hardcore. Extreme in ECW just meant it was an extreme thing, like the cruiserweights and all the stuff that Bischoff
you
took.
gave it your all. You didn't,
It was an extreme
You left
show.
everything in the ring, whether it was, 1,000 holds or a pint of blood, But
Exactly.
you went all out. Yeah, not to use AEW's paper.
Right. That being said, I think, and we talked about last week, what if Bischoff would have been able to buy WCW, and I came to the conclusion that I think after about 10 years or so that it still would have gone under. In my personal opinion, and then I'll pass it on to you. I think that the way Paul Heyman talks about what direction he wanted to take ECW, it would have turned into more of an NXT AEW-esque show. If they would have been able to secure a TV deal, they would have been able to maybe hold on to some of the talent that had no choice but to go to ECW or to the WWE. The Cruiserweights being a specific example, with the Radicals and Mysterio and those guys. Malenko, they were the ushers of the not hardcore but extreme style of wrestling that the U.S. hadn't really seen very much of. I personally think if Heyman would have been able to keep control of his roster and keep control of his angst in the business, and would have been able to work with his sponsors and that kind of thing, I feel like ECW could have held on stronger for longer than even WCW would have at the time. What do you think?
And this is where you and I disagree. First off, I watched to do a little research, because I was not an ECW person. I didn't even know about them until I was working at Family Video, and I saw one of the pay-per-views on VHS, and I was like, "What the hell is this ECW?" And I was a WCW, WWE guy, and then always been a WWE guy, so I didn't know anything about this. And then I was hearing about all these people that came from ECW. Which I watched the rise and fall. I watched most of the rise and fall of ECW this morning, which I found funny that Paul Heyman said, "Yeah, Bischoff and Vince raided our talent." And Bischoff got on there. He said, "No, it's not a raid. If you go in and you offer more money and people call you and stuff, it's not." And then Vince gets on there. He goes, "Oh yeah, we fucking raided him." I thought that was hysterical.
Well, and that was the thing with Vince too, is he was able to be upfront about it because he was paying ECW the whole time anyway.
So they were building great talent. I mean, we wouldn't have Malenko and Benoit and Guerrero and Jericho without ECW, and they got poached. And then Heyman said, "Well, I'll bring in the Luchadors, and you're going to see this that you've never seen before." And then WCW poached them, and so he was on the forefront. He was doing, he brought about the Attitude Era. The violence and stuff, had to be toned down and stuff, but that would have never happened if it wasn't for ECW. If it was for ECW and WCW going more real, WWE, I think, looked at both of them and then said, "Okay, we're going to take this part and we're going to take this part." And then you have fucking Stone Cold Steve Austin, then you have The Rock. But going down the road, Extreme Championship Wrestling didn't mean blood and guts. But at the same time, that was one of the things that people loved. Foley even talked about that in his anti-hardcore messages, or promos, that he was, "I bleed for you, lose my teeth, lose my ear, and it's never enough." And the fans wanted more. They would have signs that say, "We want blood." So go ahead.
Oh, that's all right. Go ahead.
So I think that would have turned off a lot of fans, because he couldn't have kept that up forever. You know,
And I agree.
And I think there would come a time when somebody, I mean, fucking, what, Sabu broke his neck in the ring. Taz broke his neck in there. Mass Transit almost got murdered.
That was his own fault, and I'll stick with
yeah,
that.
that was and New Jack's fault, because New Jack, everybody holds him in high regard. That motherfucker didn't know when to turn it off. I mean, he thought that everything was a shoot.
That's why. He was a spectacle more than he was a great pro wrestler.
Yeah, he would literally go out there and try to fucking murder you. And
depending on who you were and what you said before the match, yeah. And that's the thing. I totally agree that the blood and guts and the violence would not have lasted. But the thing is, you got to also remember, so we took away ECW. The fans still wanted it. We ended up with CZW. We ended up with XPW there for a while. Those fans, those hardcore fans, they got their extreme after it was gone. But based on the fact that Heyman was willing to take the product into a new direction, slowly but surely they would have been able to tone it down to a point where they still would have had their hardcore fans. And I don't mean hardcore as in violent. I mean hardcore fans of the product that would have followed them into whatever direction, as long as it wasn't, Mantar and, the gobbledygooker and that kind of thing. But
and Duke the Dumpster Droese.
Right. But I will say that, and this may tick off some of the more diehard ECW fans, but I think they would have had to get rid of guys like Sabu on a full-time main eventer schedule.
Yeah, turn him into a spectacle.
Something, because he just, he was great for what he was, but he didn't do a lot of pro wrestling. He was an extreme wrestler. Same with one of my favorites from the era, and now wouldn't have translated anywhere near as well, was Sandman. To me, Moxley is the evolution of a guy like Sandman, where he can fucking wrestle. He's a good wrestler. He's a great wrestler, but he's also that fucking give no shits, beat me up, and I'm going to beat you up. It's almost a very similar gimmick. But Sandman couldn't go. Like, they named him Hack in WCW. You know what I mean? Like, and then eventually he had some of the better storylines in ECW history, where he was blinded by Raven's cigarette, and and then he ended up having his son taken away by Raven, and Raven brainwashed his whole family, and Sandman's down on his knees, bawling his eyes out, pleading for his son and his family to come back to him. That whole angle was fantastic. They had a lot of angles with Sandman, but they're great. But as far as trying to build a new product into the future and into a new era of ECW, you would have had to gotten rid of him, at least as far as being one of the guys fighting for the world title. But you had guys like Rob Van Dam, who were undoubtedly the future of pro wrestling. If they would have still had ties with WWE, you still could have had crossovers with Taz, which maybe we would have seen Taz in a more active angle, maybe trading back and forth with him, since he wasn't really used like we thought he would be on Raw or SmackDown when he debuted there. You had Mike Awesome, who had left for WCW but was great. We could have gotten him back because the thing is,
it wasn't a Candido.
Yeah, I mean, and that's well, and so we also have to look at it this way. Had Heyman been able to get a hold on not only a TV deal, but had a hold on the money, which, if you ask, or anybody from those days that worked for Paul Heyman, there's a small handful that said they never had any financial issues with Heyman, but the higher majority of people that worked for Paul Heyman didn't see a lot of money, if any. Some of them are still to this day waiting for a check from WCW. So had he been able to get a hold on his money, and they would have been able to actually make some money and build some money, they could have taken some of those talents back. There was guys that didn't want to go to WCW or WWE, that wanted to stay there. They wanted to see that product grow.
Yeah, they had families, they had mortgages and shit.
I mean, Lance Storm is one of the guys that said he was never screwed by Paul Heyman financially, and he didn't really want to go anywhere. He wanted to see that company grow. Same with Raven, same with RVD. I mean, RVD was the king, in my opinion, at that era. He was the image that I think he wanted to go with Paul being Paul Heyman. Same with Taz. He wanted more of that kind of UFC-esque shoot fight style that we all know now as being like the indie style, you know, that whole kind of blur the line, more kicks and flies, you know, like it was more of a legit feeling product. So the reason why I feel like it would have lasted is because if and only if Paul Heyman were able to get a handle on a couple of things and also delegate some of the power that he had to other people other than the Dudleys and Tommy Dreamer and those guys, because they were doing, as you probably saw in that documentary, they were doing merch.
It cracked me up.
They were doing they were doing all the calls. They were, everybody was doing everything. Taz was designing the T-shirts and the logos for the pay-per-views,
and then Dreamer, Nunzio, and Devon were packaging and
right.
And
so
Bubba was booking the arena.
Exactly. Which is not a bad thing. That helped keep them afloat. But that talent should have been able to focus on them being talent. They needed to pay people that were able to handle those things for them. We were also creeping into the age of social media very slowly at that time, being 99, 2000, 2001. But
it was AOL Instant Messenger at that point.
I mean, they started WWE was doing Taboo Tuesdays where you could vote on the internet for what match types they were. And, so I think if Paul Heyman would have stepped back and been the brain of creativity of the show, because he was a evil genius of creative. We saw that in WWE.
There's no doubt.
I think it would have lasted longer than, obviously more than it did, but if they would have been able to jump onto a network that wanted wrestling for one, which at that time was very hard if you weren't Vince McMahon, nobody really cared that, because, ECW wasn't making a lot of money. So it was hard to market them. But if he was able to have the time to completely rebrand the product, completely rebrand his roster, not rebrand the roster, but really shake things up on the roster as far as who started competing for that world title. Because, Jerry Lynn and RVD had 2, but 3 of some of the best matches in pro wrestling history, if you ask me personally. Like, I love
Dude, highly underrated when he left ECW.
Now
he's in WCW, and he's just kind of like a really good enhancement talent. Oh, he's
and look at him, and obviously this is an interesting concept, but he is now a producer trainer in AEW, where smaller guys who can work leaps and bounds more than some of the bigger guys that, like Vince guys, that smaller era didn't, Taz was not a big dude. No. RVD is not really a big dude.
He's about my height. He's like 6, because I'm 6'2", so yeah, he's around 6'2", which in WWE is average.
Right. And and then you had the cruiserweights, not big guys, but what was selling the most tickets? There was your 1 or 2 blood and guts matches, which was your Sabu, your Sandman, those things, the Rottens, but then you had Balls Mahoney, but then you had guys like RVD, Jerry Lynn, Dean Malenko, Eddie Guerrero, Benoit. Like, those would have transitioned into his top players. They would have been the guys at the top of the card. So think about it that way. Like, considering that would have been the change in roster, had they had a secure deal on TV, I think the sponsors would have changed their minds a little bit, because all of those guys are top, if not god tier wrestlers at the time. So in my opinion, had he been able to secure that roster, secure that TV deal, we'd be talking about a completely different ECW today.
I can see your point, but I don't know. I still, and I'm not just doing this to say, just to create controversy, I still don't think it would have lasted. I mean, it was the little engine that could. It was
okay. So let me ask you this: had they secured a TV deal, let's say Spike, okay, how much longer would they have lasted, in your opinion, once
No,
they
see, they
secured that
went
deal.
out officially, what, 2001?
2000.
I think they would have made it 2005 to 2007. But I mean,
Which is funny because that's conveniently when One Night
they
Stand
rebranded.
and the WWE CW had started. So
that was
we might have
unplanned.
met right there. We might have met right up against that WWE's version of it. It's kind of interesting.
Like, yeah. Like you were saying, I could see, the slow changes, the boiling the frog in the cool water and stuff, to where, and WWE did that too. They're still doing that, you train your audience and whatnot. I mean, any kind of mass media will slowly change and stuff. So yeah, but I still think that it would have fizzled out. I don't think going up against the juggernaut of WWE would have. And yeah, they had that kind of working relationship and stuff, but that was all on Vince. Vince could have said, "Well, they're getting too big for the fucking britches now. Time to put the hammer down."
True.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and he could have really started poaching people left and right. Offering them big deals like he did just recently to thwart AEW.
Right. So let's say this. Okay. Let's say your theory is correct, and around, let's say 2007, we'll go with 2005 is when Spike's ECW had been canceled. Let's say though that One Night Stand happened a year later. We gave it a year. WWE and Paul Heyman are discussing business regardless, because they did. Obviously Heyman ended up there and whatnot, because he's still there to this day. But let's say WWE decided to make ECW their third brand, as they did, but Paul Heyman never lost creative control, but it was still under the WWE umbrella. Do you think that would have lasted? Because you got to think, you have their TV time, their funding, their assets, but you have Paul Heyman as the creative force with no interruption other than, no, you can't be that violent or that gross or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. So, to a point, yes, because in ECW, Paul Heyman was the end all be all. Now he's got masters to answer to. So let's say they throw him on Sci-Fi like they did. Well, Sci-Fi was the reason that you got some of the shitty gimmicks. You're like, well, we're Sci-Fi, so we want aliens and zombies and vampires and stuff. So he would have had to cater to that master. Now, Paul Heyman, being the creative genius he is, he would have been able to weave that pretty well. But then he would have had the master, Vince, coming down. And you look at NXT now, put that under the microscope, then that Triple H was running everything and stuff. And then all of a sudden, basically kind of out of the blue to us, I don't know how long it's in the works in the background, but Vince was like, yep, no, that's it. We're rebranding NXT. You've been working on this for 6, 8, however many years, 10 years, however long NXT's been around. But no, we're just going to take over and we're going to rebrand it. We're going to do this. We're going to do this my way. And yeah, you could still write the storylines and do this and that and stuff, but I have final say. And this, we're not having little guys like this. These are the people I want. And so I could see Vince doing that, saying, here are the pieces to, here are the toys that you get to play with. You make the story up, but, and Paul Heyman could say, well, I want to play with He-Man. No, you get G.I. Joe. Well, I want Thundercats. No, you only get G.I. Joe. Actually, no, that wouldn't work because G.I. Joes are small. You only get He-Man. Those are the only figures you
only
get.
The 12, you only get the 12-inch G.I. Joe. Vince gets the 12-inch G.I. Joes.
But, this is all you get, and that's all you get to play with. Well, what if I want Transformers? No, you don't get Transformers. You only have these toys to play with. So, I would see that fizzling out. I think it would last a little longer with Paul in control, but eventually I think it would be too much. And being, Paul being the, creative mind he is, and he was able to do a lot with ECW. B, he was able to give a lot of freedom to the wrestlers, where AEW does that now. But you have the match, and RVD just grabs the mic and starts talking.
Well, I think ultimately
that kind of stuff wouldn't happen.
Right. And like I said, I think ultimately you're right. I think either way, once WCW was gone, there was no second brand. Like, they were going to swoop it all up. And regardless of whether they were able to bring it back, eventually control of some type would have been taken from Paul Heyman, as it has multiple times in that company. And eventually it would have fallen apart. Now, would that have maybe aided towards an earlier development of NXT? Maybe. Would Paul Heyman have been an extremely good asset to have in NXT? Absolutely. I think he'd be great in AEW. He's going to be an asset no matter where he goes creatively. And he's got a specific way of making the talent feel special. And
he should definitely be teaching promo and psychology.
Yeah, absolutely.
He could pull on heartstrings. He could get the crowd. I mean, you knew when you were watching a Heyman episode of Raw.
Oh yeah.
I knew the moment that he got fired from Raw from that position,
because I was super obvious.
Oh, this changed. This sucks. You know?
Yeah, and so like I said, I think ultimately, unfortunately, we still would have saw the demise of ECW regardless. But I think it was good to happen. Unfortunately, a lot, just like WCW, a lot of guys and girls lost their jobs and never really found work again after that, at least not to that level. But I think, it opened up the opportunity for, like, today, having a company like AEW who is taken from ECW, WCW, WWE, Japan, Mexico, and wrapped it all up like a bundle of sticks, but they're all the best sticks they had from each company. So ultimately, yes, ECW still would have folded alongside WCW, and a lot of the other territories that Vince swallowed up. But I think regardless, no matter which time frame it ended, it still did it still was a massive influence on the business. And yeah, so
well, and we wouldn't have got Impact. We wouldn't have we wouldn't have AEW now.
I somewhat agree. Yeah.
We wouldn't have got that abortion of what ECW was rebranded WWECW. That was
the first two one night stands were fantastic.
Oh yeah, and they should have left it there.
Even the second one was great, that had John Cena and everything on it, but they used it right. They
because that's when RVD won the title.
Yep, and then screwed it up for being a pothead. But
they should have just left it at that.
Yeah,
send it on its merry way.
That pay-per-view made money, man. So of course, Big Daddy Vince is going to be like, "Well, we might as well do it again, and then again, and then again." I want control. I know you're the one that was the reason it made money, and your creative image is the reason it made money. But I want it, and and we'll milk it until nobody wants it anymore, and then nobody will talk about it anymore.
And I've heard rumors that he wanted it to bring it back to squash it because people were still talking about it, so he wanted to leave a sour taste in the mouth.
Yeah, who knows?
It hasn't. But I think, like you said, it was right where it needed to be, when it needed to be, and it was for how long it needed to be. It just needed to come in a blaze of glory, turn the wrestling community, the wrestling world on its fucking heels, and changed the game.
It's all about the game. You play it. It's all about control. You can take it.
My earbuds fell out.
Nerd. So yeah, anyways, that'll mostly conclude this week's What If.
Can I add something from a couple of weeks ago?
I guess.
One thing that we forgot in the What If in the Benoit episode, this is the What If addendum from a couple of weeks ago.
Word.
Yeah. We would have got the continuation of the shitty Vince died storyline.
Oh yeah. And you know what? And we could actually make that a what if down the road. Like, what if Vince continued that story anyway? We could, because that'll be just pure fantasy booking at that point. Because nobody knows what was good. Not one word has been brought up about where that was supposed to be going. So
yeah. So we'll completely wang that.
Wang it.
So yeah, we had a tie. So we'll throw up a new poll.
Yep.
You guys vote on it. If you don't vote, we'll pick one.
And also, I wanted to throw out too with the Mount Rushmores. I'm gonna make a post on the Sideways in Time Twitter as well. I want you guys to comment on it. So I'm gonna say we're gonna give you the Mount Rushmore of best talkers or whatever, like it was this week, but whatever it is next week, we're gonna post that. Drop in your Mount Rushmores for us, and if anything, we'll give you shout outs and give some of yours out as well as ours every week, because I like to include you guys. You know.
What if we post the Mount Rushmore before, like
that's what I mean,
before next week's show? Yeah, we post it.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought you were tomorrow.
Yeah. We'll post it within the week, and then that way they got time to
comment.
No,
are you
for next week's?
Are you going to post next week's Mount Rushmore or this week's Mount Rushmore?
No, for next week's show, so that they can chime
Okay.
in.
Okay. You and I are on the same page, even though we didn't discuss it because we share a brain.
Sometimes. Only a quarter.
Yeah, sometimes.
Unless you saw the picture from him and I standing side by side at Journey Pro, where I'm like very intensely discussing something while Patrick's looking at a bird in the sky, whatever it was. But
I saw the lights, man. I didn't have my aviators on. I saw the lights.
Well, anyway, everybody, thank you so much for joining us yet again for episode 3 of Sideways in Time. I had a great time. I'm speaking for Pat. I'm assuming he had a great time as usual.
I did.
All right. Make sure, yet again, follow us on Twitter at Podcast Kinda, at LuchaChris TV, at Gone Patrick. Also, as usual, follow Banned from Ringside Podcast at BFR Pod. Also want to give a shout out to our buddy Stardom Podcast. He's I keep forgetting to mention him on these shows every week, but he's a good friend of ours. Patrick's on one of the a previous episode of that. I'm coming up eventually once I find the time to actually get on the show with him. But it's super fun.
It is STRDUMMB, something like that. I don't know. We'll add him in the Twitter.
Yeah, we'll add him.
That's what the kids say, right?
Anyway, everybody, thanks again. We'll see you guys next week, huh?
Yeah. Hey, and don't forget, mark the fuck out.
Awkward.